What happens when the man you love, the man you built a life with, steals it all right from under you? For Erin, cloud. Her perfect marriage and beautiful home vanished in a single day, sold by her husband to fund a life with his mistress. He left her with nothing but the clothes on her back and a lawsuit she couldn't afford. He thought he had destroyed her. He thought she was gone. What he didn't know was that you can't destroy a phoenix. You only show her how to rise from the ashes. And this phoenix wasn't just coming back for her house. She was coming back for the entire neighborhood. Life on Magnolia Drive was a carefully curated masterpiece, and Erin Cloud was its chief curator. Her home, a restored 1920s craftsman, in the heart of the historic Willow Creek neighborhood, was her canvas. Every wainscoted wall, every reclaimed oak floorboard, every window box overflowing with ivy, had been chosen sanded or planted by her. She had given up a promising career in architecture to build this life with Marcus, her charismatic, devastatingly handsome husband, a man who worked in high-stakes wealth management. "You have the real talent, Erin," he'd often say, kissing her temple as he glanced at her designs for the local community center. "I just move numbers around. You create." But lately the numbers were all he seemed to care about. The client dinners stretched past midnight. His phone, once left carelessly on the kitchen counter, was now perpetually in his pocket, screen down. When she'd asked about their joint savings last month, planning a restoration for the neighborhood's old gazebo, he'd been dismissive. "Don't worry your pretty head about it, darling." He'd smiled a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "The market's volatile. I've moved our assets into a more dynamic portfolio. It's all tied up." Erin, trusting him, had let it go. She turned her focus back to the neighborhood committee, to the charity auction she was planning, to the life she was building. The last normal morning began with the scent of coffee and the rustle of the Wall Street Journal. Marcus was dressed in a pristine, custom-tailored suit that cost more than her car. "Big day," he said, adjusting his cufflinks. "This new client, Chloe, is demanding. But if I land her, we're talking a massive commission." "Chloe," Erin asked, pouring him a cup. "You've mentioned her a lot. Is she the one you were with at the aviary last week? My friend Sarah thought she saw you." Marcus didn't flinch, but his grip on the coffee mug tightened almost imperceptibly. "Chicago is a small town for people in my line of work. Yes, that was probably her. All business, I assure you. She's intense." He kissed Erin's cheek, a dry, papery gesture. "I'll be late. Don't wait up." He left. Erin spent the day finalizing blueprints for the annual Willow Creek Preservation Fair. She felt a nagging unease, a cold pebble in her stomach. She couldn't explain. She brushed it off as stress. At 4:00 p.m., she drove home from a meeting with the city council. As she turned onto Magnolia Drive, she saw it. A large, garish, sold sign staked into her immaculate front lawn. A cold laugh bubbled in her throat. This had to be a prank, one of Marcus's rich, tasteless friends. But as she pulled into the driveway, she saw a strange car, a cherry-red convertible, parked where her car should be. She walked to the front door, fumbling for her keys. She slid the key into the lock. It didn't turn. She tried again. Jiggled it. Nothing. The lock was new. A cold, sharp panic, bright as magnesium, flared in her chest. She rang the doorbell, her hand trembling. The door swung open. It wasn't Marcus. It was a woman young with sharp features and platinum blonde hair, wrapped in Erin's own silk robe. Erin recognized her from an Instagram photo Marcus had been tagged in Chloe, the intense client. Can I help you? Chloe asked, sipping from one of Erin's antique crystal glasses. What are you doing in my house? Erin stammered. Who are you? Where is Marcus? Chloe's lip curled into a smirk. He's upstairs celebrating, and I'm afraid you're mistaken. She leaned against the door frame, the silk robe falling open slightly. This isn't your house. Not anymore. Marcus! Erin shouted, pushing past the woman. The sheer audacity the violation sent a shock of adrenaline through her. Marcus, what is going on? The house was different. Her antique furniture was pushed against the walls covered in plastic. Boxes were stacked in the hallway. Champagne bottles and 2 used glasses sat on the grand piano. Marcus appeared at the top of the stairs, buttoning his shirt. He froze when he saw Erin, his face a mask of annoyance, not shame. Erin, you're home early. What is she doing here? What is that sign doing on our lawn? Erin's voice was rising, cracking. Why did you change the locks? We need to talk. Marcus said, his voice dropping into a cold, businesslike tone that chilled her to the bone. He means, Chloe said, sauntering into the foyer, that I live here now. Erin looked at Marcus, searching his eyes for the man she married, for the joke, for the mistake. She found nothing, only a cold, hard finality. Marcus, tell her to leave. Now! She can't, Erin, Marcus said, descending the stairs slowly. He didn't look at her, focusing instead on straightening his tie. The house is sold. The title cleared this morning. Sold? What are you talking about? We didn't sell the house. I never signed anything. You did, Marcus said, simply, 3 months ago. Remember that refinancing paperwork I had you sign, the one to lower our mortgage rate? Erin's blood ran cold. She remembered. A thick stack of papers he'd brought to her late at night. Just sign here, here, and here, honey. It's just a formality. She had been tired, trusting. She had signed. That wasn't refinancing Erin. That was a transfer of deed and a full power of attorney. The words didn't make sense. A power of attorney? Why? To make things easier. Chloe cut in her voice, dripping with venomous satisfaction. So he could liquidate his assets, including this dump, and invest in us. Liquidate? Erin's knees felt weak. She grabbed the banister. Our savings, the joint accounts, are gone, Marcus finished. It was my money, Erin. I made it. You just spent it on doilies and saving dead trees in this pathetic neighborhood. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. This wasn't a sudden affair. This was a plan. A long, cold, calculated execution. You can't do this, Erin whispered, the fight draining out of her, replaced by a hollow dread. I own half of this house. We're married. The law, Marcus said, stepping in front of Chloe, says that your signature on a legally binding document is all that matters. You signed over your rights to the property. I sold it. A private sale. To Chloe. He gestured to the woman. She's the new owner. And as the new owner, she'd like you to leave. Leave? Erin looked around at the walls that held her entire life. I have nowhere to go. My clothes. I've already had your things packed, Chloe said, pointing to 3 black trash bags sitting by the garage door. Just the essentials. The furniture, the art. That was all part of the sale. Erin looked at the trash bags. Her life reduced to 90 gallons of plastic. Get out, Erin, Marcus said, his voice flat. Don't make this messy." "Messy," she repeated, her voice dead. She looked at the man she had loved for 15 years. You've destroyed my life. You stole my home." "A home is just an asset," Marcus said, opening the front door. "And you, my dear, are now a liability I can't afford." He threw the trash bags onto the porch. The rain, which had been threatening all day, began to fall. Cold, hard drops that mixed with the silent tears streaming down Erin's face. She stood on her own porch, locked out, dispossessed and utterly broken, as the door to her life clicked shut in front of her. For 3 days, Erin operated in a fog. Her friend Sarah, her only real confidant, had taken her in. Sarah's tiny one-bedroom apartment in a downtown high-rise felt like a different planet from the sprawling, tree-lined streets of Willow Creek. Erin slept on the couch, staring at the ceiling, the same scene playing over and over in her head. The lock, the smirk, the trash bags. She had $200 to her name, which she'd had in her purse. Her credit cards were declined. Her car, she learned, was in Marcus's name only. He had systematically, meticulously erased her. "You have to fight him," Sarah insisted, pacing the small living room. This is sociopathic, Erin. We'll get a lawyer. We'll sue him into the Stone Age." They met with a legal aid attorney, a young, earnest man named Mr. Davies. He listened patiently, his brow furrowing. The news was not good. "Ms. Cloud, what you've described is fraud in the inducement," he explained. "He tricked you into signing. The problem is proving it. It's your signature on a notarized power of attorney. It's your signature on the deed transfer. He'll claim you were a willing participant. Without a paper trail, without a recording, it's a he said, she said case. And he has all the money, which means he can afford a team of lawyers from a firm like Sullivan and Cromwell to bury us in motions." "So that's it?" Erin asked, her voice hollow. "He just wins. We can file for an emergency injunction to try and freeze his assets, but he's likely already moved them offshore. And since he sold the house to a third party." "His mistress," Erin spat. "His mistress reclaiming the house is almost impossible. We'd have to prove she was a co-conspirator, that she knew the sale was fraudulent. It's a very high bar." Erin left the office feeling more hopeless than before. She was not just broke. She was legally neutered. That evening, as she was listlessly sorting through the meager belongings, Marcus had allowed her some clothes toiletries, a few photo albums. A small wooden box fell out of a sweater. It was her Aunt Isolde's. Her aunt had been the black sheep of the family, a brilliant, eccentric artist who had lived in Paris and never married. She passed away 2 years ago. Erin had been her favorite, and she'd been left this small, locked box. Erin had assumed it held sentimental trinkets, and in her grief had never opened it. She found the tiny key on her key ring. Inside there wasn't jewelry. There was just a single folded letter and a business card. The card was heavy, cream-colored stock. It read, "Arthur Kensington, Senior Vice President, J.P. Morgan, Private Bank." The letter was written in her aunt's elegant, spidery script. "My dearest Erin, if you are reading this, it is likely because the world has proven to be as cruel as I always warned you it was, or you've turned 45, whichever comes first. You are brilliant, Erin. You have a mind for structure and beauty that this family never understood. I watched you give up your dreams for that charming, hollow man. A predator always knows a gentle soul. I did not leave you a simple inheritance. Money is a burden until it is a tool. I left you power. When our family's tech stocks were nothing I invested, I never sold. Mr. Kensington at J.P. Morgan manages the Isolde Cloud Trust. It is yours fully and completely upon two conditions: you reach your 45th birthday, or you provide Mr. Kensington with proof of financial or personal ruin. I imagine that husband of yours will provide the latter quite efficiently. Don't use this to buy back your old life, Erin. It's tainted. Use it to build a new one. Use it to build an empire. Don't get sad. Get even. Your loving and very, very rich Aunt Isolde. Erin's hands were shaking. She stared at the card. It had to be a joke. Her aunt was an artist, a bohemian. The next morning, with Sarah by her side, Erin made the call from a pay-as-you-go phone. She was routed through 3 assistants before a warm British voice came on the line. "Miss Cloud, Erin, we have been waiting for your call. Your aunt was a most remarkable woman. I am so sorry for the circumstances, but I am authorized to confirm the Isolde Cloud Trust is fully vested to you. We have been managing the portfolio for 2 decades. After capital gains and estate taxes, the current liquid value is, let me see, $78,500,000. Sarah choked on her coffee. Erin dropped the phone. She picked it up, her entire body vibrating with a strange, cold energy. "Mr. Kensington," she said, her voice no longer the whisper of a victim, but the clear, sharp tone of a CEO. "I need you to liquidate $50 million in assets by noon, and I need the name of the most ruthless corporate litigation firm in Chicago, not a divorce lawyer, a shark." The next time Erin saw Mr. Davies, the legal aid lawyer, she was flanked by 2 men in dark suits from Kirkland & Ellis, one of the most powerful law firms in the world. She had paid Mr. Davies's firm a consulting fee of $50,000 for his initial help and kindness. "Erin, Miss Cloud, what is this?" he stammered, staring at the men. "This Mr. Davies is my new team," Erin said. She was different. Her hair was cut into a sharp architectural bob. She wore a tailored black suit. The grief was still there, but it had been forged into something hard. "They'll be taking over. We're not just filing for an injunction. We're launching a full-scale investigation into Marcus Cloud for wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy." The new legal team descended on Marcus like a tactical unit. They filed subpoenas for his personal and business accounts, for Chloe's accounts, for every LLC he'd ever formed. They hired a forensic accounting team, Kroll Associates, to trace every dollar. What they found was worse than Erin could have imagined. Marcus wasn't just a simple cheat. He was in deep. He had been funneling his clients' money, millions of dollars, into a series of high-risk, fraudulent real estate ventures. He was running a Ponzi scheme. He hadn't sold the house to Chloe just for the affair. He'd sold it to her, using his clients' stolen money to hide the asset from his creditors before his entire scheme collapsed. "He's desperate," Erin's new lawyer, a sharp woman named Maria Liu, explained. "He's not just running from you. He's running from federal prison. He needed to liquidate everything, disappear, and start over in a non-extradition country with Chloe." "And the house?" Erin asked, her heart pounding. "He's trying to flip it. Fast. He and Chloe are planning to sell it to a developer who has been sniffing around Willow Creek, a shell company called Apex Properties." A cold recognition hit Erin. Apex Properties. She'd seen their name. They were the ones who had been sending aggressive low-ball offers to all the residents in Willow Creek, trying to buy up the historic homes. The neighborhood committee which she used to lead had been fighting them for months. "They're vultures," Erin said. They want to tear down the historic homes and build those glass and steel monstrosities." "Exactly," Maria said. "And Marcus is about to hand them the key to the neighborhood. Your house is the cornerstone of the historic district. If it falls, the zoning board will buckle and the rest of the neighborhood will be forced to sell." Erin looked at the map of Willow Creek on the table. Her street, her neighbors. Old Mrs. Henderson, the young couple with the new baby, the park she had redesigned. Marcus wasn't just destroying her past. He was trying to destroy her entire community. "Mr. Kensington," Erin said into her phone, "I need you to form a new LLC for me, immediately. A real estate development corporation." "Of course, Miss Cloud." And the name, Erin looked out the window of the high-rise office down at the city. She thought of the fire that had burned her life to the ground. She thought of what rises from it. Call it Phoenix Residential. And its purpose, "We're going shopping," Erin said, a cold smile touching her lips for the first time in weeks. "I'm going to buy a neighborhood." Marcus and Chloe were living in a paranoid bubble. The sudden, aggressive legal assault had terrified them. Their bank accounts were frozen. A lien was placed on the house on Magnolia Drive. They couldn't sell it. They couldn't access their money. They were trapped. Marcus, in his arrogance, believed he could still outsmart everyone. He arranged a clandestine meeting with the CEO of Apex Properties, a ruthless developer named Julian Thorne. Thorne was a shark in a Brioni suit, a man who saw Willow Creek not as a community, but as a square on a spreadsheet. "The deal is off, Marcus," Thorne said, meeting him in the sterile lobby of a downtown hotel. "The property is encumbered. Your wife or ex-wife has an army of lawyers crawling all over it. It's toxic." "I can fix this," Marcus pleaded, his usual charm replaced with a sheen of desperate sweat. "It's a temporary injunction. My lawyers can get it lifted." "Your lawyers?" Thorne laughed. "You can't even afford your lawyers. They're dropping you. I, on the other hand, can make this go away. I can buy the house, pay off the lien, and give you a small finder's fee that your wife's team can't touch. An offshore account, enough to disappear." "How much?" Marcus asked. "1 million. And in exchange you also help me convince the other residents of Willow Creek to sell to me." "Convince them how?" "You were their neighbor. You know their secrets. You know who's in debt, who has a sick relative. You find their pressure points. I'll do the rest." Marcus, cornered, agreed. He had gone from master of the universe to a common thug. What neither of them knew was that the waiter filling their water glasses was a private investigator hired by Phoenix Residential. Erin heard the entire conversation. "He's using my old neighbors," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "He's going to threaten them." "It's worse, Erin," Maria Liu said. "Thorne isn't just a developer. He's under investigation by the SEC. Our forensic team found a link. He and Marcus were in on the Ponzi scheme together." Apex Properties was the real estate venture Marcus was funneling his clients' money into. Erin finally saw the whole picture. Marcus stole the house to pay off his debts to Thorne and to get a seat at the table. Chloe was just a useful idiot, a cover story. "We have them," Maria said. "We have enough for a federal case. We can leak this, and the FBI will have them both in cuffs by dinner." Erin was silent for a long moment. She looked at the map of Willow Creek. If Thorne and Marcus were arrested, now Apex Properties would be thrown into chaos, its assets frozen. Including the houses in Willow Creek they already owned, they'd managed to buy 4. The whole neighborhood would be in legal limbo for years, decaying. "No," Erin said. "Not yet. An arrest freezes the game. I need to win it." The next day, the residents of Willow Creek received 2 letters. The first was from Apex Properties, a final aggressive offer full of legal threats about eminent domain and neighborhood decay, implying their homes would soon be worthless. The second letter arrived an hour later on thick, elegant cardstock. It was from Phoenix Residential. It was a personal letter from Erin. She told them her story. She told them exactly what Marcus and Apex had done. And then she made her own offer. She wasn't offering to buy their homes. She was offering to invest in them. Phoenix Residential offered to pay 20% above market value to any resident who wanted to sell. But for those who wanted to stay, she offered something better. Her firm would provide interest-free loans for home restoration, upgrade the neighborhood's infrastructure, new sidewalks, buried power lines, and fund a new charter school. In exchange, the residents would agree to place their homes in a historic trust, legally protecting Willow Creek from developers like Apex forever. She was saving the neighborhood, not by buying it, but by fortifying it. She ended the letter with an invitation to a town hall meeting at the end of the week. Julian Thorne was furious. He had been outmaneuvered, but he still held the 4 houses he'd already bought, and he was determined to get Erin's old house the key to the district. He doubled down, pushing his lawyers to break the lien Marcus's wife had placed on it. The Willow Creek Community Hall was packed. The air was thick with fear, anger, and confusion. They were neighbors who had known Erin for a decade. They had seen her gardening. They had pitied her whispering about the humiliating way Marcus had thrown her out. Now she stood at the podium, flanked by her legal team, the picture of power and composure. "I know you're all scared," Erin began, her voice amplified by the microphone. "You've been bullied by Apex Properties. You've been threatened. And I know that the man who did this was my husband. He betrayed me, but he also betrayed all of you." She laid out the evidence, the link between Marcus and Julian Thorne, the Ponzi scheme, the plan to tear down their homes. The residents gasped. "Apex wants you to believe your homes are worthless," Erin continued. "I'm here to tell you that your homes are priceless, and I am not here to buy you out. I am here to be your partner." She presented her plan, the restoration loans, the new park, the historic trust. "Julian Thorne and Apex Properties want to tear down your memories. I want to give them a new coat of paint. I want to restore the foundations." An old woman in the front row, Mrs. Henderson, who had lived on Magnolia Drive for 50 years, stood up. "Erin, dear, this sounds wonderful. But Apex already owns 4 properties, and they're still fighting for yours. How can we stop them? They'll just build their glass towers around us. They'll block out the sun." "That's a very good question, Mrs. Henderson," Erin said. "Apex thinks they can wait us out. They think I'm just one woman. But I'm not. I'm a resident, and I have the capital to fight them on their own turf. As of this morning, Phoenix Residential has put in an offer to buy the debt that Julian Thorne used to finance his company." The crowd looked confused. Maria Liu stepped up. "Let me translate," Maria said with a grin. "Mr. Thorne's company Apex is built on a mountain of high-interest loans from private equity. We are currently in negotiations to acquire that mountain. If we do, Erin won't just be his competitor. She'll be his bank. She'll own him." A wave of laughter and applause rippled through the crowd. "But first," Erin said, holding up a hand, "we have to deal with the houses they already own, and my old house." "How?" someone shouted. "Thanks to Mr. Thorne's illegal activities, which we've shared with the SEC, his assets are about to be seized and put up for public auction to pay back the investors he and Marcus defrauded. That includes the 5 houses in Willow Creek." The room fell silent. "An auction," Mrs. Henderson said, her hand at her throat. "But dear, that means anyone can buy them. Thorne could just buy them back." "He could," Erin agreed, "but he'll have to go through me first. The auction is in 2 days, and I promise you all I will not be outbid." Meanwhile, in a cramped prepaid apartment, Marcus and Chloe were watching a live stream of the town hall on a laptop. Chloe was frantic. "Our accounts are frozen, Marcus. The house is being seized. That witch is going to ruin us." Marcus was pale. He wasn't just ruined. He was trapped. Erin wasn't just coming for the money. She was coming for everything. He saw the news ticker on the bottom of the screen. "Federal grand jury convenes in Apex Properties fraud case." "She's not just buying the neighborhood," he whispered, finally understanding the scope of his miscalculation. "She's building a fortress, and she's locking us out." "What do we do?" Chloe wailed. Marcus looked at the door. He still had one fake passport, one last escape route. He looked at Chloe, her face blotchy from crying, her expensive hair a mess. She was no longer a beautiful asset. She was a witness. I need to think," he said, grabbing his keys. "Stay here." He walked out of the apartment, got in his car, and drove not to a lawyer, but toward the Canadian border. He left Chloe behind without a second glance. The air in room 304 of the Cook County Courthouse was thick and stale, smelling of old carpet ozone from the humming fluorescent lights and the damp wool of coats. It was a room devoid of grandeur, with pale, water-stained ceiling tiles and rows of unforgiving wooden benches. Yet on this grey November morning, it was the most expensive theatre in Chicago. The room was packed. The front rows were a sea of dark suits lawyers for the creditors, a few bottom-feeding developers, smelling blood in the water, and the press a mix of local news crews and stringers for financial journals. In the back, a tight, nervous cluster of 20 men and women sat together. They were the heart of Willow Creek. Mrs. Henderson was there, her hands knotted around a worn leather handbag. The young couple who had just had their baby, the husband bouncing the child nervously on his knee. They were here as a silent jury, their faces a mixture of terror and fragile hope. On the right side of the aisle, Julian Thorne sat flanked by 2 remaining lawyers from his once formidable firm. The men looked grim, their briefcases thin. Thorne, however, projected a defiant arrogance. He was dressed in a pristine Brioni suit, his silver hair perfectly coiffed. But a small jumping muscle in his jaw and the pallor beneath his expensive tan betrayed the sheer animal panic he was trying to contain. He was a king, reduced to fighting over the last scraps of his own burning castle. On the left side sat Erin. She was the picture of calm, a still point in the swirling anxiety of the room. She wore a deep navy blue suit, tailored to perfection. It was armor. Beside her, Maria Liu had a laptop opened, one hand resting on it, the other holding a pen. A few seats down, Arthur Kensington, the senior vice president of her private bank, had flown in from New York. He wasn't there as a banker. He was there, as he'd put it, to see your aunt's investment philosophy finally put into practice. Erin's gaze was fixed on the auctioneer's podium. She did not look at Julian Thorne. She did not need to. She could feel his hatred, a cold, radioactive energy burning at the side of her face. Marcus, she had learned, was not present. A federal warrant had been issued for his arrest 3 days prior after he failed to appear at a preliminary hearing. He was officially a fugitive from justice. Chloe, after being abandoned by Marcus with no money and a frozen apartment, had been picked up by the FBI. She had, in a single terrified 12-hour session, given a full and tearful confession, detailing every crime, every hidden account, every conversation in exchange for a reduced sentence as a material witness. It was over for them. But the fate of Willow Creek, the physical breathing neighborhood, was still on the block. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer, a man with a rapid nasal voice, announced, tapping his microphone. "We are here to conduct the asset forfeiture auction for case 771B regarding the frozen holdings of Apex Properties and its principal Julian Thorne to satisfy the claims of his creditors." A low murmur went through the room. Thorne sat like a stone statue. "We will begin with the 4 properties located in the Willow Creek Historic District, followed by the 5th separately encumbered property. We will proceed with Lot 1, the property at 112 Magnolia Drive." A picture of the house flashed on the projectors. A quaint Tudor revival. A beautiful property. Bidding will start at $500,000. Before the auctioneer could even finish one of Thorne's lawyers, a junior associate raised his paddle. $500,000! It was a weak, obligatory opening. Thorne was trying to show he was still in the game. Maria Liu nodded at Erin. Erin's paddle, branded with the number 101, shot up. $1 million, Erin said, her voice clear and carrying across the room. The room gasped. It wasn't a bid. It was an execution. She hadn't raised him. She had doubled the starting price instantly, signaling that this was not a negotiation. Thorne's lawyer, who had clearly been given instructions to fight, looked at his boss. Thorne, his face rigid, gave a short, sharp nod. $1,100,000, the lawyer said, his voice hesitant. Erin's paddle didn't go down. It stayed up. $1,500,000. This time the silence was absolute. She wasn't just bidding. She was burning his money for sport. Thorne's lawyer looked at him again, pleadingly. Thorne stared at Erin, his eyes narrowing to slits. He was doing the math. This was a war of attrition, and she had all the ammunition. He shook his head, a tiny, furious gesture. The lawyer lowered his paddle. $1.5 million. Going once. Going twice. Sold, the gavel cracked. To bidder 101, Phoenix Residential. Mrs. Henderson let out a sob of relief. One down. Next, the auctioneer said, moving on. Lot 2. The property at 118 Magnolia Drive. We'll start the bidding at $500,000. Thorne's lawyer opened again as instructed. $500,000. Erin's paddle went up. $1 million. A nervous laugh rippled through the press row. Thorne's lawyer didn't even bother to counter. He just shook his head. Sold. The gavel cracked again. To Phoenix Residential. 2 down. Julian Thorne's face was now a mask of thunder. He had been publicly neutered, his powerlessness exposed. He had come here for a fight and was being dismissed like a pest. Lot 3, the auctioneer called. 140 Magnolia Drive. Bidding starts at $500,000. This time Thorne's lawyer sat on his hands. Thorne was clearly saving every last penny of his liquid capital for the main prize, Erin's house. $500,000, Erin said, opening the bidding herself. $550, a new voice called from the middle rows. Erin Mariah and Mr. Kensington all turned. A man in a tan suit, holding paddle 208, had bid. He was flanked by 2 other men. "Who is that?" Erin whispered to Maria. Maria was already typing. "One moment. Paddle 208 is registered to a shell company, Redwood Holdings. Let me check the registry. 600,000, Erin said, turning back to the auctioneer. 650, the Redwood Holdings man countered immediately. He hadn't looked at Erin. He was staring at the auctioneer, his face placid. 700, Erin said. 750, the man replied, his voice a monotone. A new dynamic had entered the room. This wasn't Thorne. This was a professional, a developer who saw 4 houses in a prime district being snapped up and wanted a piece of the action. "Maria," Erin pressed. "They're clean," Maria whispered, her fingers flying. "Delaware shell funded by a private equity group out of Boston. They're just a standard developer. They're not with Thorne. They just smell a bargain." 800, Erin said. 850, the man in the tan suit said. The residents in the back were holding their breath. This was a complication they hadn't foreseen. "Erin," Mr. Kensington said softly, leaning past Maria. "Don't get into a war of pride. The asset isn't worth this much, not with the restoration costs." "It's not about this one asset, Arthur," Erin said. Her eyes locked on the picture of the house. "It's about the perimeter. I can't have a hostile developer squatting in the middle of the neighborhood. It undermines the entire historic trust. I don't just need my house, I need all of them." She raised her paddle. $1 million. The man from Redwood Holdings paused. He looked at Erin for the first time. He saw her Mr. Kensington of J.P. Morgan and Maria Liu of Kirkland & Ellis. He saw the phalanx of lawyers. He saw the ironclad resolve in her eyes. He was here for a quick flip. She was here for a crusade. He conferred with his colleagues. They shrugged. This was more trouble than it was worth. He placed his paddle face down on his lap. "Sold," the gavel cracked, "to Phoenix Residential." 3 down. "And now lot 4, the auctioneer said, sensing the tension. 133 Magnolia Drive, starting at 500,000. 500,000, Erin opened. 600,000, Thorne's lawyer snapped. Erin's head turned. This was a new tactic. Thorne was bidding again. He hadn't given up. He was trying to make her bleed. He wanted her to overpay for the 4th house, draining her reserves before the final battle for her own home. He thought her resources, while vast, were finite. He thought she was still running on an inheritance. He didn't realize she was running on a private bank with the full backing of her aunt's decades-old, compound growth-fueled portfolio. 700, Erin said. 800, Thorne's lawyer shot back. 1 million, Erin said, her voice bored as if swatting a fly. 1.1, Thorne's lawyer said, his voice cracking under the strain. 1.5, Erin countered. Thorne, enraged, grabbed the paddle from his own lawyer. 2 million, he shouted, his voice hoarse. The room went dead silent. He had just bid $2 million on a house worth at best $900,000. It was a desperate, spiteful, emotional act. He was burning his own money just to cost her. Erin paused. The residents behind her were trembling. This was the monster they had been fighting. She looked at Thorne, really looked at him for the first time that day. She saw the desperation. He needed her to fight him. He needed this to be a struggle. She gave him the cruelest cut of all. She lowered her paddle. "No," she said, just loud enough for the auctioneer to hear. Thorne froze. His face went from rage to sheer, uncomprehending horror. He had just spent $2 million, a huge chunk of his remaining capital, on a house he didn't even want, a house that was now a financial black hole. He had been goaded into punching himself in the face. Going once, going twice, the auctioneer said, stunned. Sold to bidder, 114 Apex Properties. Thorne slumped in his chair as if he'd been shot. He now owned a house he couldn't afford, an asset his creditors would immediately seize and force him to sell again at a loss. He had crippled himself. And now, the auctioneer said, taking a sip of water and straightening his tie. He seemed to understand that the preliminaries were over. We come to the final lot, the property at 220 Magnolia Drive. Erin's breath hitched. A picture of her home flashed on the screen. Her home. The porch she had designed, the windows she had washed, the garden she had planted, the door that had been slammed in her face. This was not business. This was reclamation. This property is the largest in the district and carries significant historical weight, the auctioneer intoned. It is the cornerstone of the Willow Creek community. Bidding will start at $2 million. Thorne, looking grey and broken, was conferred with by his last remaining lawyer. He had just burned $2 million, but he still had something left. This was his last stand. He had to get this house. It was his only remaining shred of collateral, his only hope. He straightened his suit, his face a grotesque mask of false confidence. He raised his paddle. $2 million. Erin's paddle shot up. $2.5 million. $3 million. Thorne shot back the words a snarl. $4 million. Erin said, her voice as calm as a frozen lake. The room was no longer breathing. This was not an auction. It was a duel. The numbers were just bullets. 4.5. Thorne said, his voice strained. He was near his limit. He was sweating now, the expensive tan streaked with perspiration. $5 million, Erin said. Thorne's lawyer put his hand on Thorne's arm, whispering furiously, Julian, we can't. That's the last of the reserves. We're done. Thorne shook him off. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. $6 million! He roared, pointing his paddle at Erin, his face purple. You think you can waltz in here? You were nothing. You were a gardener, a housewife. This is my world. My world. I will see it bulldozed. I will see it turned to dirt before I let you have it. The auctioneer slammed his gavel. Order, order, sir. You must remain civil, or you will be removed. The residents gasped in horror. Mrs. Henderson was crying. Erin didn't flinch. She waited for the room to quiet down. The outburst had done exactly what she needed. It had exposed him, not as a businessman, but as a rabid animal. She leaned over to Maria. What's his absolute final to-the-grave limit, the most he could possibly leverage? Maria glanced at her screen, where the Kroll investigative team had fed her real-time data on his last known credit lines. He's posturing. After that idiotic $2 million purchase he has, maybe $7.1 million. Tops. If he bids that he is personally and professionally bankrupt, he won't have enough left for a bus ticket home. Erin nodded. Thank you. She could bid $7.2 million. She could win this by a single increment. But her aunt's voice echoed in her head. Don't get even. Build an empire. An empire needed a foundation. It needed to be built on something stronger than spite. It needed to be built on a statement. Julian Thorne was still standing, panting, his eyes wild. He was waiting for her $6.1 million bid. He was waiting for the fight. Erin raised her paddle number 101, $10 million. The number dropped into the room like a granite block. It was not a bid. It was a judgment. The man from Redwood Holdings who had stayed to watch the show let out a low whistle. The press corps erupted, cameras flashing. Thorne's face, it was a sight Erin would never forget. The rage, the defiance, the arrogance, it all evaporated, leaving behind a hollow, empty shell. The color drained from his face, leaving a waxy gray pallor. He didn't just look beaten. He looked erased. He had come to fight a housewife, only to find himself facing a financial entity he couldn't even comprehend. He was a rowboat trying to ram an aircraft carrier. He sat down heavily. His paddle clattered from his numb fingers and hit the floor. His lawyer, seeing the game was over, didn't even try to retrieve it. He just started packing his briefcase. $10 million, the auctioneer repeated, his own voice trembling slightly. Going once, going twice. He looked at the empty space where Thorne's paddle had been. The gavel cracked the sound like a gunshot in the silent room. Sold to bidder 101, Phoenix Residential. A roar erupted from the back of the room. The residents of Willow Creek were on their feet, sobbing, embracing, applauding. Mrs. Henderson gripped Erin's shoulder, her knuckles white. You did it, dear. You did it. You saved us. Erin finally let out the breath she felt she had been holding for a year. A single tear traced a hot path down her cheek. She hadn't just saved them. She had bought her life back. She had bought her home back. Mr. Kensington leaned in, his eyes twinkling. Your Aunt Miss Cloud would have been profoundly entertained. Well done. As Thorne sat paralyzed in his chair, two uniformed police officers, who had been standing discreetly at the back of the room, began to walk down the aisle. Thorne, in a last pathetic fit, saw a cameraman zooming in on his face. He lunged, knocking the camera to the ground. Julian Thorne, one of the officers said, grabbing his arm. Get your hands off me. Do you know who I am? Thorne blustered. Yes, sir, we do, the officer said, snapping a pair of handcuffs onto his wrist. You're under arrest for multiple counts of wire fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement in connection with the Apex Properties investigation. You need to come with us. As they led him babbling and defeated out of the courtroom, Erin Cloud stood up. The media swarmed her. Ms. Cloud. How does it feel? Was this revenge? What will you do with the neighborhood? Erin didn't answer. She put a comforting hand on Mrs. Henderson's arm, gave a grateful nod to Maria and Mr. Kensington, and walked, head held high, out of the courtroom. She didn't need to say a word. The gavel had said it all. The downfall of Marcus Cloud and Julian Thorne was swift and brutal. Thorne was arrested in the lobby of the courthouse, charged with multiple counts of wire fraud and conspiracy. He would spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Marcus was apprehended 2 days later by Canadian Border Patrol trying to cross into Quebec using a poorly made fake passport. He was extradited back to Chicago. With Chloe's testimony and the mountain of evidence from Erin's team, his trial was a formality. He was found guilty and sentenced to 25 years for his Ponzi scheme on top of the charges for fraud and forgery against Erin. The final piece of karma, however, was Erin's. As the legal owner of Apex Properties' debt, she was the primary creditor. When Marcus's personal assets were liquidated to pay his victims, Erin's lawyers made sure that the first victims in line were the clients he had defrauded. But there was one asset left, his finder's fee, that Thorne had hidden in an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Erin's team, with the help of federal authorities, clawed it back. It was $1 million. after his other clients were paid that $1 million was awarded by the court by default to the last remaining creditor, his wife Erin, as part of their now finalized divorce settlement. The money that he had stolen, that he had sold his life for the money he was going to use to run away with, ended up in Erin's bank account. She donated every penny of it in Marcus's name to a shelter for victims of domestic and financial abuse. 1 year later, Willow Creek was unrecognizable in the best possible way. The sound of hammers and saws was constant. Erin's company, Phoenix Residential, had kept every promise. The new buried power lines meant the old-growth trees were no longer threatened. The sidewalks were new. The park was lush, and the historic homes were being restored to their former glory, one by one. Erin's restoration of the neighborhood won national architectural awards. Phoenix Residential was now one of the most respected community-first development firms in the country. She wasn't just a developer. She was a visionary. She never moved back into 220 Magnolia Drive. She stood on the sidewalk watching as a new sign was hung over the restored porch. The house had been her prison, and then her prize. Now it was her gift. The Isolde Cloud Center for Community, the sign read. It was a beautiful free-to-use space offering legal aid for women financial literacy classes and an architectural program for at-risk youth. Mrs. Henderson came up and stood beside her. "It's beautiful, Erin. What you've done. It's a miracle." "It's just a house, Mrs. H." Erin smiled. "It's the people inside that matter. And you, dear. You own this whole neighborhood now," the old woman said, patting her arm. "You're the landlord of all of Willow Creek. But you're not moving back in." Erin looked up at the house, her gaze clear and strong. "No, my aunt told me not to buy back my old life. She told me to build a new one." She pointed to a smaller, modern, and beautifully designed new home she had built for herself at the end of the street. "I like the view from there much better." The final scene, the one that played on the local news, was a split screen. On one side, Marcus Cloud in a faded orange prison jumpsuit, gaunt and grey, mopping a hallway in a federal penitentiary. On the other side, Erin Cloud cutting a ribbon at the community center, surrounded by cheering neighbors, her face bright and powerful, the undisputed and beloved owner of the entire neighborhood. They say the best revenge is living well. But Erin proved that building well is even better. She didn't just take back her life. She rebuilt an entire community and took her power back brick by brick. Her story is a powerful reminder that no matter how completely someone tries to burn your life to the ground, you have the power to rise from those ashes and build an empire. What did you think of Erin's ultimate comeback? Was Marcus's karma hard enough? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of drama betrayal and ultimate triumph, please make sure to like this video and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. Thanks for listening.